Blessings, good evening to you all. It's a cold, wintry night. Tomorrow is the first official day of winter, but it's here already. There's snow on the hills, and there's a chill in the air. So we hope that you're all keeping warm, keeping healthy. So we have a few questions tonight because it's Tuesday night. I'll try and give you some answers. The first question is, Luang Por, when I breathe in through the nose, the abdomen rises, then the abdomen falls, and the out-breath comes out through the nose. Is it correct to say that it is the long breath or not? You have to answer that. The breath certainly affects our mind, doesn't it? You'll notice if you practice Anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing, your state of mind is often reflected in the breath. So if you're very excited, agitated, the breath is often a bit shorter. If you're more relaxed, calm, certainly if you've been sitting still for a long time, especially in meditation, your breath becomes more refined and often a bit longer. But then everybody's resting pace of breathing, when they're at rest, varies as well. Some people shorter, some longer. So whether you breathe in through the nose or when you're really short of breath, you tend to breathe in through the mouth. But whether the breath is short or long, that's for you to know, isn't it? And the important thing is, when you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, to pay attention to the breath. To know it going in, know it going out, know the beginning of the breath, the middle of the breath, the end of the breath, to know whether it's coarse or refined, long or short. And to keep paying attention to it. Becoming good friends with the breath, not letting your mind stray from the breath. And it's challenging because there'll be the 5 hindrances come up in our minds. Desires, wanting, aversion, not wanting, sleepiness, restless agitation, worry, doubt. But then also we have the challenges of physical aches and pains, feelings come based on the body, so discomfort pulls us away, pulls our mind away from the breath. External distractions like sounds. So there's many challenges while we're watching the breath. And our aim is to set them all aside and stick with the breath. And then you'll know whether your breath is long or short. It doesn't really matter. If you become more skilled in breath meditation, more familiar with the breath, well, you can sometimes use the breath to calm your mind down. By becoming mindful of the breath, you can do a certain amount of breath control, and that can calm the mind down if you are very agitated. Particularly say you're panicking or afraid, it can help you to deal with that state of fear. Similarly, if you're angry, if at that time when you're angry you're able to go to the breath, again can calm you down, help you let go of the anger. But the important thing is just to know the breath. That's your goal. Pay attention to the breath, and you will become aware whether the breath is long or short. Most people find breathing in through the nose is more healthy and more sustainable as a meditation object. You can focus on the rising and falling of the abdomen. That's okay, and that's one point of contact that some people, say particularly the Burmese tradition and different Vipassana traditions, like to focus on the arising, falling of the abdomen. So you can experiment and see if that suits you. And some people stick with the chest. So the arising and falling, or the expansion and contraction of the chest, of the lungs. And this is one point of contact for the breath. And you'll find whether your mind is focused on the tip of the nostrils, with the breath going in and out at the nose, or the chest, or the abdomen. The more you pay attention, the stronger and more continuous your mindfulness and clear comprehension becomes. The mind and the breath begin to merge, and you're aware of the breath, and that tends to slow the breath down a little. And it becomes more refined, and the movement becomes more and more subtle. And it can get to the point where you no longer are aware of movement of the breath. You're just at that one point, whether it's at the tip of the nostrils or the chest or the abdomen. Your awareness merges at this one point. All your mental energy seems to unify there. And that's when you generally experience the factors of samadhi begin to arise, such as joy, rapture, happiness, and one-pointedness. And if you really get to the point where all the sensations of the body, and including the breath, disappear, but you're still fully aware, you're not asleep, you're not dull or sleepy, then you go into a very deep, bright, radiant state of mind. And you're no longer aware of the sensation of the breath as movement, but you're just aware of the mind itself. Second question is, when there is such a deep breath as described above, I will contemplate by reciting mentally that this body is of the nature to grow old, decay and die before the out-breath goes out through the nose. This is quite tiring and laborious during daily life, unless I am doing formal sitting meditation. Is this the correct way to practice contemplating on death with every breath? My gratitude and sadhu. Well, like you say, especially in the beginning when we're working to establish mindfulness and our mind is the monkey mind moving around, just to stay with the breath is already quite a challenge. So if you're adding a phrase, some sentences of reflection in your mind, with that can feel like an additional burden, like a lot of extra work, so you probably will feel tired. But if it's a technique that you find holds your attention, you can try it, and if you become more mindful, your mind becomes more steady, the awareness is more continuous, well, it may help you. What you find is whether you're reciting a single word or a phrase, or you're with the breath, this is what we call samatha meditation. And your main aim is simply to develop continuity of mindfulness with an object, whether it's with the words or word or the sensation of the breath. But sounds like for you this phrase or this reflection that you're contemplating, reflecting on the aging and decay and death of the body, it's preparing your mind for the contemplation of impermanence. It's reminding you of impermanence. It's what we call anicca sanya, perception of impermanence. So if it helps, then continue with it. And it's helping you to see that this body mechanism, this physical body, is an impermanent thing. Literally every breath is teaching you impermanence, isn't it? Because you breathe in, there's a pause, you breathe out. That in itself is just teaching you the impermanent nature of the body. If the breathing mechanism stops for whatever reason, you die. If it's interrupted by shortness of breath, you cough, or you have mucus, or there's pollution in the air or something, your breath is exposing the fragility and the impermanence of life at that moment. Or very obviously, as if you're underwater. So if you're ever swimming underwater, you know you've only got a short amount of time before you die because you can't breathe underwater. So the breath does teach you impermanence. Reciting or reflecting on impermanence as you watch the breath can then lead on into vipassana meditation, observing this characteristic in the breath itself and then in the body. So it's bringing up that perception. If it helps you to let go of things, let go of the grasping nature of the mind that wants to hold on to every thought, think every thought through, hold on to trains of thought and the various emotions and feelings coming with them, then use it. That can be, it's just like an introduction to vipassana, you could say, just reflecting this body is impermanent, or the breath is impermanent, this body is aging. It could lead on to the arising of a state of samadhi as well, just as focusing on the breath can, focusing on the reflection, the words, or the reflection on impermanence can as well. But the aim is always to get the mind to beyond the 5 hindrances. And whatever technique, method works for you, do it. Once the mind is one-pointed and the 5 hindrances are in abeyance, they've gone quiet, then you can really know and see impermanence in body and mind. Quite naturally, you can turn to contemplate or observe the arising and passing away of thoughts, sensations, feelings, perceptions. And you can direct the mind. When the 5 hindrances have gone quiet, it's quite possible to direct the mind to investigate the physical body in a very deep, profound way and see its impermanent nature. You can investigate the component parts of the body, the 32 parts of the body, the 4 elements, one particular part of the body or one element, and really focus the mind on the impermanent nature of that element, and also to see what is impermanent cannot be a lasting self. It's giving you an insight into anatta, the selfless nature of this body. So one of the ways, we can be a bit creative in our meditation. So if contemplating impermanence, bringing up reflection on the decay or the aging of the body as you also watch the breath, if that works for you and it's helping you to let go of all the other distractions, thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past, keeps your mind in the present moment, well, you can use it. And then you're seeing like we say death before death, something Ajahn Chah used to talk about, dying before you die. You're letting mental states die. They arise and they pass away because your mindfulness is continuous and you're seeing impermanence, changing nature of the mind and body. Mental states, thoughts and moods come up and you let them die just there. You allow them to cease without indulging in them or holding on to them, clinging on to them. You're not giving too much importance to them. When you're observing impermanence, you can let things go. So these are like little moments of death. With the in-breath and the out-breath, you're allowing a thought to die, as it were. You're seeing the impermanence of your thoughts, your feelings. And so you're getting used to seeing death before death, or dying before you die. And you'll see the nature of these 5 khandhas, the 5 aggregates, body, feelings, perceptions, thought formations, sense consciousness. Their nature is impermanent. What is impermanent cannot be a lasting self. You don't really own anything that arises and passes away. It's giving you insight all the time, and that insight can become really deep and established in your mind. Helps you to let go of the mind of craving and attachment, the wanting, the desiring, the suffering. Insight into impermanence helps you to remedy your suffering, because if you know a thought is impermanent, it's not you, it's not a self, you can let it go. So if that thought is a thought of suffering, you're worried, afraid, angry, fed up, bored, or you have desire, wanting something that you haven't got. When you can see that thought or that mental state as impermanent, you can let it go. It no longer has power over your mind, so you'll suffer less with it. You can see it's not a self, it's not really you. You can let it go, you don't suffer. And this is why we can change our habits, our mental habits. This is why we can free the mind from suffering. Part of this is what we call right effort, the practice of cultivating right effort to abandon greed, anger, delusion from the mind, unwholesome mental states. When you can see a mental state as a mental state, you have enough mindfulness to do that, and then you can see the characteristic of impermanence. When you can do that, you can abandon it. And human beings, we can learn this skill, and we can free our mind from the suffering of greed, anger, delusion. So keep going. Lumpur. Generally, I am able to follow pretty well on my in and out breath during sitting meditation. However, sleepiness and nodding off is a big hindrance for me. Can Lumpur please share some tips on how to overcome these difficulties? Well, this question seems to be a little bit contradictory. You say you're able to follow the in and out breath pretty well, but then you have a big problem with sleepiness. So, at the moment you're sleepy, you're obviously not following the in and out breath, because if you were, you wouldn't fall asleep. And that's the simplest, most direct way to deal with sleepiness, is don't let go of the breath. Hold on to the breath so tightly, fix your mind, attach your mind to the breath so well that sleepiness doesn't get a look in. There's no space in the mind for sleepiness to sneak in. That's what it does, it sneaks in, doesn't it? Dullness, sleepiness, drowsiness, it's a habit. We've come through, since we were a baby when we loved to sleep, through to our youth, when we spent too much time lying in bed in the morning maybe, to when we're an adult and we're at times when we're feeling tired and we just let our mind drift. Yeah, it's a habit we built up. When there's not much stimulus, the mind can drift. It can be enjoyable if you're tired or have some stress, then to let the mind go into drowsiness becomes quite attractive. So some people like it, and they want it. So if you can establish mindfulness on the breath and stick with the breath, you're going to break that habit little by little, the habit of drowsiness, dullness, sleepiness. But you have to work at it. And sometimes the breath is such a subtle meditation object, sometimes it's not really enough. You can't stick with it yet. So you need other techniques to help as well. So the Buddha recommended one, which is just reciting Dhamma. So that could be chanting, or just quietly reciting a sutta, or a teaching, or a phrase, or a single word, to, again, stimulate the mind in a wholesome way with the Dhamma. So you stick with that word, or that phrase, or that chant, and that just has enough stimulation to help prevent the mind drifting into that pleasant state of drowsiness. Sometimes the Buddha recommended the perception of light. So Ajahn Chah used to say, well, light a candle, or nowadays you might have some kind of little electric light, or a battery-operated light, or a candle in front of you, and you focus the mind on that. Periodically, if you're struggling with sleepiness, and the light of the candle, you're learning to memorize it, as it brighten your mind by remembering the light as an object that you now internalize. Close your eyes and you visualize light. And if you've done it a few times, you can do it without even having a light in front of you. You can remember light. The light of sunlight, daylight, or a bright light. Your eyes are closed, but now you create or imagine light. And that can wake your mind up. Because you'll notice when your mind is in samadhi, when you have mindfulness, there's a certain radiance there, and you might actually see the brightness of the mind as a light nimitta when your mind is in samadhi. So as you're meditating, sometimes you create the light nimitta, or you remember the light nimitta ahead of time to stop you going into sleepiness. There are other ways, like in the Zen monasteries, they come round, there's one of the monks comes around and taps you on the shoulder with a bamboo rod. The idea isn't to hurt you, it's just to tap you, and that wakes you up, because when you're drifting off into sleepiness, you lose awareness of your body, your mind goes to that dullness. And the Buddha said it's like being in a dark prison cell, in a dungeon. So your mind goes dark, but if someone taps you on the shoulder, it wakes you up, it stimulates you. It's a little shock, a momentary shock, so that can bring you out of the prison cell of dullness, and your mind wakes up again, doesn't it? As the same way as focusing on light, or reciting words of Dhamma, or if you are able to stay with the breath. But you have to watch it, because some people don't like that method. Because we've tried it, not here, in Thailand we tried it in the monastery, and the one monk walked up and down the line tapping anyone who fell asleep, and some people didn't like it, and they'd argue with the monk and say, hey, leave me alone. So in this modern era where people love to talk back and argue and complain, the one tapping on the shoulder has to watch it, because some people don't like it. But I guess in a way that's waking them up, isn't it? Because if it makes you annoyed because someone's tapping you on your shoulder, then you're not going to be asleep. So anger keeps you awake as well. It's just not a very good method for keeping you awake. Other methods are going to stay or meditate in places that bring up fear, or at least a little bit of fear. So monks, we go to graveyards, or we go to forests with wild animals or snakes, Or you go and sit on a cliff and you're worried that you'll fall off the cliff if you fall asleep. It's that idea that just to be in some place that stimulates a bit more than normal. If you're one who's scared of ghosts, then your graveyard can do that. One of the stories I remember from my dad, he used to make a lot of money because some of his friends were scared of ghosts, and whenever there was a haunted graveyard, he would offer to go and stay in the graveyard as a wager, and they'd have to give him £5, British pounds, if he could spend the whole night in the graveyard, because he wasn't scared of ghosts. So sometimes even they'd have those like stone sarcophagus, where it's like a stone coffin with a lid, and he'd go and sleep the night in the coffin and make £5. So if you're not scared of ghosts, that's not going to work, is it, as a way of waking you up? You have to go somewhere that's going to scare you. So you have to find something that you're scared of, whether it's wild animals, ghosts, people, whatever. You go somewhere that's just going to maybe outdoors. That'll do it, just being outdoors somewhere. So you have to find something that's going to stimulate you. A new environment, an object, reciting something. Remember in England when they first moved into Amaravati Buddhist Monastery, which was an old school, and it was really run down and there was no heating. It was really cold in the winter, even colder than this. Melbourne is cold in the winter, but England is even colder. And they'd get ice on the windows and ice anywhere where there was water, because the heating was hopeless in the first year there. And they had one practice before the morning meeting. Some of the monks would go and break the ice on the pond and jump into the pond and wake themselves up. Some people go and have a cold shower to wake themselves up. When I was in Thailand once, we stayed in a monastery called Tiger Stream Monastery. Tiger Stream, the stream was actually freezing cold water coming from the mountains. And I was staying there in the winter and the water was freezing. So when monks were sleepy, they'd go and jump in the water, have a bath. You wake up. So you do whatever it takes to wake yourself up. You have to have this goal, I don't want to be asleep. Because as I said, one reason we fall asleep is because it's a habit of indulgence. We enjoy it, we like it. It reminds us of the pleasure of falling asleep at night when we're tired. So you have to go against that, work at it. Sit up straight, focus on your object, have a cold shower, sit in a graveyard, whatever works. And Ajahn Chah's tongue-in-cheek method is catch a cobra. I guess if you're in Australia, catch a tiger snake and throw it into the room with the person who is sleepy, and they won't be asleep. However, I have actually spent the night asleep, not with a tiger snake, but with a snake called the green snake, ngu kio, which is potentially deadly if it bites you. Several times I've been in a hut in the forest in Thailand, and the snake has moved into the hut for the night, and you want to go to sleep when the time comes, so you can still sleep even with a poisonous snake in your hut if you really need your sleep. So whatever works. Another question. Dear Luang Por, how do we motivate ourselves to start practicing again after a period of giving up practice? I'm not sure which part of the practice you gave up. I assume you mean meditation. If you give up the precepts, you're in trouble, because it means you'll have started to kill, steal, commit acts of sexual misconduct, tell lies and get drunk. So don't give up your precepts, whatever. Don't give up generosity, because that means you become very stingy and possessive and probably a very selfish person, not a very pleasant person to be around. So don't give up your generosity. But I imagine you mean giving up meditation practice, because most people find that quite hard to sustain when you also have to earn a living, look after a family, maybe have a busy lifestyle. So one of the ways the Buddha encouraged us to keep practicing meditation, developing the qualities of meditation, mindfulness, goodwill and compassion, insight into impermanence, vipassana meditation. The Buddha said, reflect on death. Going back to the meditation on death again, we could die tonight. This could be our last night. You just don't know when you're going to die. And what state of mind do you want when you die? Do you want your mind to be peaceful or all over the place? Full of anger, fear, worry, regret, sadness, greed, attachment for things? Or do you want to be peaceful? If you want to be peaceful, then start your meditation today. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Someone was saying today their habit is, they were talking about a nun actually, a habit they got from a Buddhist nun. She says, never put off tomorrow what you can do today. If there's something good that needs to be done today, do it, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring. Tomorrow could bring illness, death, disaster, problems, obstacles. If you've got the chance to do good today, do it. So if you've got a bit of free time, meditate right now. Meditate while you're listening to me. Sit there, focus on your breath and meditate. Before you go to bed at night, meditate, especially if you have bad dreams, restless sleep, or you can't sleep because you're worried about something. Meditate before you go to sleep. Maybe you can marry the two. The person who's having trouble with sleepiness in their meditation, they need, at those times when they're getting lazy or they're worried about things, that's when they need to meditate, and then they'll sleep well at night. They won't have any problem sleeping if meditation brings you sleepiness. If you're one who's a worrier, you need to calm down. So meditate, bring up the mindfulness so you can let go of those worries. You can see the suffering of worrying, anxiety, and let it go. You don't know how long you've got to live. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. So better to cultivate the Dhamma today. That could be the Dhamma of generosity, morality, mindfulness, or wisdom. Our time is running out. Your life whizzes before you. The Buddha compared life to a drop of dew on the grass in the morning. These cold mornings we have, the dew is there, and then the sun comes up and the dew evaporates. It doesn't last very long. Life doesn't last very long. So do more good for yourself and others while you've got the chance. Sometimes you need discipline and you need to make determinations, what we call adhitthana. If you become lazy, you've stopped meditating because you're spending all your time on your phone or watching TV or socializing or doing other things that are maybe less important to you or less meaningful to you. You have to make a determination, a resolution, and say, I'm going to meditate for this much time every day, if only for a few minutes. Or the thing that's the obstacle, I'm going to stop or reduce my time on my phone, reduce my time socializing, watching TV, doing these other activities. Or if you are a sleeper and you spend many hours a night sleeping, well, get up a little bit earlier in the morning. You set your alarm half an hour earlier than you would normally get up and do some meditation. And it's cumulative. If you make your resolution and you stick to it for a while, it will get easier and you'll start to see results, and then you'll want to continue. It's cumulative. Good habits bring good results. It's cumulative. Similarly, bad habits bring their results. They're cumulative as well, and we gradually stray from the path and become less aware, paying less attention to our mind, and the ultimate result is we end up generally more distracted, suffering more, our state of mind goes downhill little by little. So you have to reverse that and develop the good habits so that you can abandon the bad habits. And what are the best stimuluses for people who want to start meditating again is illness. Do you have to get ill to start meditating again? You don't wait till you fall ill to start meditating. Do it now. Maybe it will stop you falling ill, or if you do fall ill, you're ready for it because you've been meditating. You don't wait till you're on your back in your bed feeling sorry for yourself and then say, oh, now I better start meditating. You're not going to feel like meditating when you're ill. Do it now before you're ill. If you have one of those long-term health problems that means you have to stop working, or use that free time to meditate. If you lose your job, okay, it's tough when you lose your job, but you've got free time, do some meditation. You make use of these changes in life. When you're at a loose end, say you've been in a relationship and your partner left you. Okay, that's tough, but now you've got free time, do some meditation. Maybe it will open up new doorways and avenues that you never saw before. Often, within every unexpected bit of suffering, there's often a silver lining waiting there. You can meditate more when you're on your own. The last question, Lumpur, how should we answer our friend when they ask our opinion on whether there is any form of justified killing? Well, if you want, you can follow the Buddha, and the Buddha, simply speaking, said, no, there is no form of justified killing. All killing is unwholesome karma, negative karma that will bring suffering as a result. Suffering for the one who's killed, suffering for the one killing, doing the killing, for whatever reason. Of course, when you kill, whether it's an animal or a human, the context is important as well. People kill for different reasons, so the intention, the volition behind the act will vary depending on the situation. So often people say, well, it's justifiable to kill when you're defending your family. Many people would agree with that. And in a situation, maybe you have, your decision comes up, somebody's attacking you or your family, and you decide you're going to kill them, or it happens in the form as you're defending yourself, or your family, or group of people. But it doesn't change the fact that karma is made, negative karma is made, because the act of killing is completed. You might say, well, there's mitigating circumstances, it's understandable. Well, maybe, but somebody dies, and that's the karma of killing. Same with killing for food. You catch fish or chop a chicken's head off or whatever. You may say, well, I'm doing it to eat. I've got to eat, or my family has to eat. So you may have your reasons, but the karma of killing is always completed if there's a being that's living, breathing, and then their life force is stopped through force in one way or another. You kill. That's one thing to bear in mind. That killing is always a negative karma, whatever the circumstances. But then the state of mind behind the killing will vary. So, say, just murder to mug someone, get their money, is going to be different than the killing of defending a person who's under attack or something. There will be those variations, but the Buddha pointed out hatred is never overcome by anger or hatred. You kill it doesn't just end there. It's karma which will bring results back to you, and not just in this life but in future lives. So of course some people don't believe in karma and rebirth, so they say, well, it doesn't matter about future lives. But the Buddha in his wisdom said it does. So you kill this life, it's going to come back, and generally the kinds of resultant karma are injury and illness and shortened lifespan in future lives. If you've killed this life, then that's how it's going to manifest in the future. So these are things to think about. The Buddha in his wisdom just pointed out killing has to come from an intention that's coming from hatred, because you want to cut off someone else's life stream. Even in a situation when they're threatening you, you have to also have negative state of mind in order to kill. So that's a very powerful karma which will come back on you. And you see, when people have killed, even in a situation maybe where they were defending themselves, later they also have to deal with the karma of regret, sadness, and then in other situations, say abortion, often people having done an abortion, they have regret, sadness over the act. Different situations that you can imagine. That the Buddhist perspective is that karma continues, it doesn't just stop there. Same with suicide, killing yourself. You may say, well, it's my right, if I want to take my own life, I can. Well, that's true, but the karma of killing, taking your own life, that is such a very powerful negative thought that it leaves a deep impression on your consciousness. And of course, when you die, your consciousness doesn't die yet. Your body dies, your mind goes on to its next birth, and it takes that deep impression with it, takes the depression, the anger, ill will into the new life. So the teaching on karma and rebirth is very important to contemplate. If there's any chance that it's true, then there's going to be karmic consequences coming back after the killing. Hatred is never ended with hatred. Hatred is only ended with compassion, love, compassion. And if you can see that, then in a situation where you may be tempted to kill, you maybe try the other option of not killing and seeing if there's another way to solve the problem. Talk them out of it, perhaps. Negotiate, discuss, avoid, run away even. There may be other options rather than killing the person or the animal. And if you've considered killing and you've decided maybe it's bad karma, then it'll open you up to seeing these other options, seeking out a different solution for the problem. So, the simple answer in Buddhism is there's no such thing as justified killing, because it will always be coming from an intention of anger or hatred, will always bring some unwholesome karma back to the one who does the act of killing. Therefore, the Buddha couldn't recommend it in terms of the path of purification of the mind, abandoning all anger, greed, anger, delusion. Then you wouldn't be able to justify killing. So that's the end of the questions tonight. Just offer you these reflections. If they're helpful for you in your practice, that's good. If there's anything that's not clear, well, maybe we can talk again another time. But for tonight, we'll leave it there.